Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Looking back over this last week, we had multiple systems that moved from the midsection of the country toward the east, drawing an enormous amount of tropical moisture, coming out of the Gulf and even farther to the south in the Caribbean, and pulling that into the southern part of the United States and along the East Coast. We had a major ice storm in the Midwest, heavy snows from Texas all the way to Michigan. But I want to talk about the precipitation that came across the Carolinas, because if we zoom in here and take a closer look at total rainfall for the last 7 days through midnight, we can see that it was much heavier in the eastern half of the state. Some locations here easily picking up between an inch, and pockets here approaching 2.5 to 3 inches of rainfall, and then drier comparatively as you go back toward the Appalachian Mountains. Now, why I show you this is because the forecast I gave you last time suggested that the heavier rainfall would be farther to the west, see? And we'd see much, lighter amounts comparatively over on the eastern side of the state. And then look at this down in South Carolina, focusing on, comparatively to the rest of the region, the driest kind of pocket here. And look at what happened. You see, the models really missed out on the track of these last few systems that came through us at the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021, and as a result, really missed the precipitation. So if you've been quite frustrated with the forecast performance, trust me, I understand. But I always focus on the European model here, and there's a reason why. It was actually the best performing of all the models we had. So this is just a skill score graphic, and it goes back quite a ways here, but it shows you that the blue line on top here, European model, has been doing the best. So I'm going to stick with it in this forecast, but I would like to update you with the newest 2020 numbers here. So when you look across state of North Carolina, we do see a lot of 1s and 2s and 3s for each climate district, representing either the wettest or a top 3 wettest on record here. And then as you get over into the northeastern part of the state, with these 7 and 8, this was just a dry midsummer. We've brought that up quite a bit. So what I'll be anxious to see later this week is this map when it gets updated, because right now it only has data through November. They're processing the December data now, but we were on pace to having our wettest year on record in North Carolina, and I don't think anybody in the state needs reminding of that. So let's talk now about the bigger picture issues that I'm concerned about now moving forward. While we do not have drought across North Carolina, and of course we understand why, there is some concern that throughout this latter half of winter, then getting into spring, that we may have to be just watching for it, watching for the development. I'll make my case as to why in a few moments. But the map we've been looking at here was released on New Year's Eve. It's showing you the latest drought monitor, and we didn't have much change in this map overall. And there's prolific drought in the central part of the United States moving to the west. Now we ask ourselves why. And now this looks like a pretty complicated figure, but let me break it down for you. We're looking here only at the month of December 2020. I want you to first see right in through here. These are anomalous jet stream winds. So what is different from normal? And you can see how right in through here on the equator, the winds were very, very strong and out of the west. Now that's not typical of this region. Normally we have eastward progression of these winds in this area. But what we're seeing here is the reflection of the La Nina. What it has done is it's really robbed the momentum of the subtropical jet stream, which likes to go in through here, but is not there this year. And as a result, the western United States is not broken away from that drier pattern, because the nose of the stronger winds can't seem to get past this region. All right. Next, look in the North Atlantic. You can see the anomalous ridge that's sitting here. That has since moved farther to the north, and I got to talk to you about what that means for East Coast weather here in the near term. So that's kind of a bit of the science behind the pattern as of late, but let's see where it got us. You see, over the last 30 days, while we've been much wetter than average here across the mid-Atlantic and across the East Coast, the west has been very dry compared to normal. So that's what this pattern has gotten us to. Now, a week ago, I was thinking that this jet stream pattern was going to come screaming across the Pacific and then slam into the west coast, and as a result, lifting toward the north and east into that big negative North Atlantic oscillation pattern. But the latest updates here have now given us a better clue as to what this is going to do, and it appears that we're going to split. Now, the consequences of a splitting jet over the west is that it tends to come together somewhere in the southern central plains. And if the the subtropical jet stream is farther to the south, this is going to give us a relatively active pattern, coming out of the south, out of the Gulf, and up the East Coast. It's also going to take things over onto the colder side of things, which means we're going to be talking in this video about snow in North Carolina. Well, let's get running into this. First, some model verification. On December the 31st, when we looked out, we saw that the pattern being forecast for precipitation January 7th through the 14th did have us with wetter conditions. But let me show you the newest forecast for that same time period, which is now the day 4 through day 10 forecast, because we're forward, of course, in time. We are still seeing this area remaining active, and you can see it there. But if I go back and forth, look at how much drier other pockets of the country are, especially here now where we're still dealing with a lot of drought. It looks as though the Great Lake Basin, getting up to the Ohio River Valley, back toward the Midwest, looks to be drier as well. So what is going on to keep things very active for the Carolinas after finishing our wettest year on record? Well, watch this. Jet stream pattern, troughs and ridges. We are going to be watching, well, we already have a trough sitting right in through here, but I want you to watch these little troughs, blues, okay, that sneak right in through this area and then just kind of become established here, giving us better chances for wetter conditions. And as we're going to talk about in a few minutes, some snow. So playing this forward, watch that again with me. Right here, we see that as we work our way through this week, there's a low toward the end of the week that's going to cut to the south right here. Now, why is it going so far to the south? Look at the large ridge that's sitting here from, eastern Canada all the way into the North Atlantic. And that's just going to shove that trough right here through South Carolina. Now, I'm concerned over what this might give us in terms of snow, and I'll show you that in a few moments. But the models just aren't done. Look at this. Now getting into next week, next Monday, Tuesday, you see how we continue to put a trough here. What's actually happening here is the jet stream is set up into a pattern which we define as these three things. Negative Arctic oscillation. What does that mean? High pressure cell at the surface right here. You can't see it in this map, but it's sitting there. Next, negative North Atlantic oscillation. That means big ridges here. And finally, a positive PNA, Pacific North American pattern. That's where we ridge to the west, having troughs both in the Gulf of Alaska and over the southeast. You see, all of that is putting together these troughs that are in this area, and being on the, the downward or the downwind side of those troughs is going to give us a very active pattern. Okay, with that out of the background here, let's at least take a look at what we're expecting this week. Our all hazards weather map is suggesting very dense fog through parts of the Midwest where we have the snow and ice, but all the action's out west to start. We can see that by playing for you here the high resolution NAM model. I'll let it go out here, and I'm going to pause it kind of as we get into middle of the day on Tuesday. I am expecting midday on Tuesday some light shower activity through North Carolina with possibly some snow showers in the Appalachian Mountains. But outside of that, throughout much of the beginning of this week, things are going to be relatively benign. It's not until we get past Wednesday until things start to get cooking again. Let me show you that by going to the European model. So here it is Wednesday morning. High pressure builds in through Thursday, see it here, but look at this system. This is the one I was telling you about that's taking shape through the lower Mississippi River Valley on Thursday afternoon and evening. Now getting into Friday morning, right there, Friday afternoon and evening. Now with enough cold air in place, with high pressure to our north, let me step you through that again. This is Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday afternoon. The low tracks to the south, there might be enough cold air here on the backside to be giving us some snow on our Friday. It will also be quite windy with this system. Well, that one pulls through Friday afternoon and evening and is out of here Saturday. And look at this, the European is really going after some snow here all the way over to the eastern part of the state, which means this is something we're going to have to watch all week, because this is right now 5 days ahead of us in the forecast. And you saw how poorly the models have been predicting precipitation, but this is the latest information we've got. Now, after that, going into Saturday and Sunday, things calm down. But look at the next storm system. Farther to the south here. This is now Sunday, cutting through Texas. We're going to have a dry weekend. But as it pulls out here, look at this once again. That low goes to the south through South Carolina next Tuesday and gives us yet another shot at seeing some snow. With this active southerly branch of the flow of the jet stream, we can just look at that and say, well, we have a pretty good chance at seeing, maybe 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches plus of precipitation. Some places in here possibly getting more than that. When you compare that to normal, that means that we begin 2021 where we left 2020 off, and that is with a wetter pattern across the state looking out here over the next 7 days. But now let's talk about snow. This is the latest forecast operational European run. Okay, so in other words, this is just one model. We see here that the system coming through on Friday has the potential for putting down 2 to 4 inches of snow, with some locations potentially picking up a little bit more. Now, snowfall forecasts in North Carolina are very challenging because this is using a 10-to-1 ratio. So that means every 1 inch of liquid equivalent the model produces 10 inches of snow. But at this point, we can't use a ratio like this for North Carolina given this temperature pattern, and we need to therefore adjust these amounts accordingly. What I want to do today, though, is just to say we'll have to do this throughout the week, which means we're going to watch this carefully for the potential snow. And oh, by the way, here's that second system coming out over the weekend that moves here by Tuesday. So you can see it was putting down snow in Texas. So going through the next week, let's just do this. What's the probability by next Monday morning that we have an inch of snow that fell? And you can see from the European model that that probability is somewhere between 50 and 90% across the state. And higher amounts, of course, as you get back over toward the Appalachian Mountains. So the idea here is that this isn't just one errant run of the European model saying it's going to snow. It's actually in the ensembles as well. But this means we got to watch it carefully throughout this week to see what we do end up getting on Friday. Okay. From there, as I mentioned, those are the teleconnections driving this pattern. And if it does that, we keep troughs into this area, week 2 tends to stay active along the East Coast, and we can see that in the models here. So I just don't think we're going to slow down as we move toward the middle of this month. Let's look longer term. How about the time period of January 15th through February 15th? Now, this is what's interesting because this I guess we should call this midwinter time period is continuing to keep this active with that big negative NAO pattern sticking around. So it appears that through at least February, our chances of being above average on precipitation are relatively high. But I ask myself this question. We know that the La Nina is making its last big push here in the Central Pacific, and it's beginning to fade where I put this X over here over by South America. Now, using that, what I went is I found the similar years to that and looked at January through March. And what's interesting is these are the drier colors here. We actually tended to be drier January through March in this area. Now, what's causing the difference? Well, that big negative NAO pattern in place right now wasn't necessarily there in 96, 99, 06, 08, and 11. Okay? From here, though, I like to give you the temperature side of this argument, and then we'll come back and put it all together. So we're cooler than normal today across North Carolina. As we play forward, this is now getting into the day tomorrow and Tuesday, another cool one. Same thing for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We got a cool week on tap. But as you know, going into the end of the week, this is when we had our chances of getting some of those snows. And I know you're going to, wait a minute, I see 45 as the high on Friday. Well, remember, the snow will be timed with the coldest time of day. And as we typically get in North Carolina, when it warms up back above freezing, when the sun comes out, in the daytime temperatures go up, we tend to melt a lot of it. But still, we see the cooler bias through much of the next 7 days. And it's around in the day 5 through 10 pattern as well. Focus on the European over here on the right. You can see that from Texas all the way through the Mid-South, getting over toward the Mid-Atlantic, we are focusing on seeing cooler than average weather for the front half of the month of January. And it's out there too as we get out past mid-month. The focus is to keep that cooler weather in the south while the warmth builds on the eastern side of North America and that ridge that's on the western side. That's what we're currently seeing in the forecast, okay? Is there support for this in the tropics? I do think there is. The MJO is popping out over here into phase 2. That's this wedge right in through here, and maybe moving over into phase 3, which is here. Well, look, phase 2 tends to favor colder air coming like this with the warmth building in this area. And phase 3 is the same thing. So the chances here of us getting extended time periods of above normal temperatures is relatively limited, given that both the tropics and the jet stream pattern are working against it. As I look out, again, longer term, we only see the slight warm bias in through here because the models are projecting an active storm track, which means they're going to be pulling moisture out of this area. But it appears that we're going to start to let out quite a bit of cold air from the Canadian prairie through the western part of the United States, and that will be following each of the fronts that come racing through the mid-Atlantic to the southeast. So this is the day, again, this is looking at the 30-day forecast, January 15th through February 15th. So when we think about that, is there any support in the La Nina? Well, we know we tend to favor warmer conditions here when there's a La Nina. You can see that even my analog years favored the warmer conditions here by a couple of degrees. But I still think that we're going to get shots of colder air that are going to come through mid-month and beyond as we work our way into the month of February. So we got a lot to be watching here. And there's one last complicating factor. The polar vortex has had a massive disruption. You can see it right here, way up in the stratosphere. Normally there's a large blue blob there, but instead we've put in this large ridge that's come right into this area. It has disrupted the polar vortex, actually giving us easterly winds in that area, and they're normally westerly. But notice this, the polar vortex, I'll color it in for you here in white, is being disrupted here and here, or split, not over the lower 48. So the question will be, is this polar vortex disruption going to cause problems for the United States? Because at this point, it doesn't appear that it is. But remember, it can sometimes take up to 6 weeks for a polar vortex disruption to translate down to the surface. So keep a close eye on this, all right? So you got a lot to watch this week, including there's some chances for some snow, and it looks like a pretty active go of it to start off January and February for 2021. I'll keep you updated. We'll keep an eye on this, especially the drought situation, and we'll go forward from there. Thanks for watching. Hope you all have a great start to your new year. Thank you.